This device right here was supposed to be the future of charging. In 2017, Apple introduced something called Airpower, a clean, white charging mat that could power your iPhone, your AirPods, and your Apple Watch simultaneously. But this wasn't just your typical charger. The whole pitch was that it didn't matter where you placed your devices. You could just set your stuff down anywhere, and it would start charging. To Apple fans, it felt like magic. A seamless, futuristic companion for the iPhone X, the most advanced iPhone Apple had ever made at the time. But then, something strange happened. The product never came out. Apple said nothing about it for over a year, and then, out of nowhere, they quietly killed it. A single paragraph press release said it didn't meet our standards, and that was the end of Airpower. So what actually happened behind the scenes? How did Apple go from showing this thing on stage to pretending it never existed? Why couldn't one of the most advanced tech companies in the world pull off something as seemingly simple as a wireless charging mat? And could a future version still be in the works? Let's take a closer look at what really happened to Apple's most quietly canceled product. But first, I want to quickly mention a product that's actually available to use. Today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you've ever thought about starting a tech blog, showcasing your work, or just building a clean site for your passion project, Squarespace makes the entire process ridiculously simple. There's no coding involved, no steep learning curve. You just drag and drop, fine-tune the layout, and suddenly it looks like you hired a professional designer to do it. And the part that really impressed me, their blueprint tool. It's AI powered and basically builds out a custom site for you based on a few quick answers about your goals, your style, and what kind of content you want. Squarespace's built-in analytics are also solid. Whether it's a blog, store, portfolio, or members-only content, everything you need is built into one platform. Head to squarespace.com to start your free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/punkwave to get 10% off on your first purchase of a website or domain. Now then, when Apple first introduced Airpower, it wasn't just some kind of side project thrown in at the end of a keynote. It was right there during the unveiling of the iPhone X, one of the biggest iPhone launches ever. This was Apple showing off its new direction. Face ID, edge-to-edge OLED, no home button. It was bold, clean, and felt fresh. Airpower was meant to round it all out. A next-gen charger to pair with a next-gen iPhone. The idea sounded amazing. You'd place your iPhone, AirPods, and Apple Watch anywhere on the mat, and all three would charge with no fuss. The mat would detect what was where, adjust the power, and even display live battery levels for each device on your iPhone's screen. They didn't just mention it and move on. They committed. It showed up on Apple's website, in promotional videos, even on retail packaging for future products. It was listed as coming in 2018, and most people assumed that it would arrive with the next batch of iPhones that fall. But then, nothing. 2018 came and went, new iPhones launched, new Apple Watches shipped, but Airpower, not a word. Which, if you know how Apple operates, is usually a pretty bad sign. So why didn't Apple just release it? Well, because it didn't work. What they were trying to do with Airpower wasn't just ambitious, it was borderline impossible with the tech available at the time. Most wireless chargers use 2 or 3 coils. That's why you usually have to place your phone in a specific spot. But Apple was trying to eliminate that limitation entirely. According to reports from inside the company, Apple was experimenting with over a dozen overlapping charging coils packed into a space barely thicker than an iPhone. The goal was simple: full surface charging no matter where you placed your devices. But all of those coils in close proximity created one big issue: heat. Overheating became the main problem. Charging one device was manageable, but once you added a second or third, the mat would start getting dangerously hot, and no amount of firmware tweaking could get the temperatures under control without sacrificing performance. Then there was the Apple Watch. It didn't use standard Qi charging like the iPhone or AirPods, so Apple had to build multiple charging systems into the same mat and somehow get them all to work together. And on top of that, Airpower was supposed to communicate with your iPhone in real time, showing the battery levels of each connected device right on the screen. That meant all of the coils, the firmware, and every piece of hardware had to coordinate perfectly. It was one of those classic Apple ideas that looked effortless in a demo and turned into a complete nightmare once they actually tried to build it. Prototypes were made, engineers kept testing new layouts, but every version reportedly ran into the same issue: too much heat, too many devices, and not enough control. From the outside, the whole situation felt off. Apple doesn't usually tease something unless it's close to being ready, But with Airpower, they made a huge announcement and then it completely disappeared. Meanwhile, the company kept releasing products that assumed Airpower was real. The wireless charging case for AirPods, it came out in 2019 with an Airpower diagram printed on the box, as if everything was still on track, but it clearly wasn't. There were also leaks from supply chain sources saying that the mat kept failing internal testing, that the coil design had been scrapped and reworked again and again. At one point, some journalists even got early info that it was ready to ship soon, only for that window to quietly vanish. Internally, Apple was stuck, but after nearly 2 years, it still couldn't meet their own standards. And the longer it dragged on, the worse it looked. Then, finally in March 2019, Apple officially pulled the plug. A short statement was released saying Airpower would not achieve our high standards and that the project had been cancelled. This was one of the only times Apple announced a product and had a backtrack. In a company that usually prides itself on polish and follow through, that was a pretty big deal. So what did they do next? They pivoted. In 2020, Apple launched MagSafe alongside the iPhone 12. And this time, they didn't try to reinvent the wheel. Instead of promising full surface charging or live syncing across devices, they leaned into simplicity. MagSafe uses magnets to snap your charger exactly where it needs to be. It doesn't matter if you're slightly off center because you can't be. The magnets do the work for you. There's no overlapping coils, overheating issues, just consistent stable charging. And it came with the whole ecosystem. Wallets, battery packs, mounts, stands, Airpower never got that far. In a way, MagSafe was the anti-Airpower. Instead of shooting for something futuristic and invisible, Apple focused on making wireless charging reliable and repeatable. And honestly, that was the right call. So does that mean Airpower is gone for good? That version of it, yeah. That all-white mat with overlapping coils and real-time battery syncing, that's dead. But the idea behind it, still very much alive. Apple's been filing patents for things like reverse wireless charging, where your iPad or MacBook could power your iPhone just by laying it on top. There's also rumors of smaller multi-device chargers being tested behind the scenes, and you could see it in the hardware too. MagSafe is still evolving. Newer AirPod cases come with MagSafe support built in. The Apple Watch still relies on its own magnetic puck, but that could easily shift to a more unified system later down the line. If Airpower does come back someday, it probably won't be called Airpower, and probably won't look like the mat we saw in 2017. And hopefully Apple doesn't announce it until it's completely done and ready to ship. But what do you think? Would you like to see Airpower return in some form or another? Let me know in the comments below. Also, real quick, I'm really close to a quarter of 100,000 subscribers, so if you like the content you're seeing, subscribing to the channel would be greatly appreciated. But anyways, thanks for watching.